Here in Miami, families affected by gun violence come together to support each other and advocate for change.
We will discuss fake news and the future of journalism.
A local organization teams up with high school students and FIU students to tell stories for change.
This and more in today's edition.
Bay News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Bay News. My name is Brianchelis Hernandez.
And I'm Vanessa Tello. Today our show is dedicated to how media influences social issues.
These issues can range from women empowerment, cyberbullying, children education, and nonprofit organizations.
Starting out our show tonight, we want to speak to the issue of gun violence and how it is portrayed in the media. Tragically, this issue comes to the forefront here in South Florida with the shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. Valentine's Day 2018 in Parkland, Florida, a mass shooting by a former student left 17 people dead, including high schoolers and teachers. Drawing national media attention and calls for action, this tragic event has stirred up the conversation for stricter gun laws. Our first story involves a local mother who used the tragic event to unite mothers across South Florida that have also been impacted by gun violence.
One of our reporters, Torrance Postel, has been taking a close look at this issue in a community that knows gun violence all too well, Liberty City.
Now at noon, someone opened fire in an apartment complex in Liberty City, killing one man and injuring two innocent bystanders.
A developing story, the search for a shooter who opened fire, sending a teenager to the hospital.
First at noon, more gun violence in South Florida. The latest victims only 18, 13, and 12 years old.
Tragedies like these are all too familiar in the Liberty City area. For one resident, this tragedy became a painful reality. On July 21, 2014, Romania Dukes encountered a parent's worst nightmare.
I went inside, started preparing the dinner, and then my cousin and I heard gunshots. And I looked at her and I say, girl, that sound like, that was right in front of your door.
Gunshots were normal for Romania Dukes and her family, but on this day, the shots left her feeling uneasy. As she left her apartment to get to Michael, she saw what no parent wants to see.
He was laying on his back, and I just kept saying, hold on, DeMichael, hold on.
DeMichael Dukes wouldn't make it. He passed away at the age of 18. Romania could have easily let the heartbreaking story end there, but instead she chose to honor her son's memory by helping mothers just like her.
I just, started getting, with other moms, doing different things, giving back, making sure they get the right information that they don't have. The community have so much power to solve these cases, and it goes back to, you see something, you say something.
NBC6 reporter Michael Spears has reported on numerous gun violence stories, most recently the shooting in Parkland. He knows the importance of the community and media working together.
I think community is a core principle of local media. Some, outlets pursue that to further degrees than others, but it's a core principle of local news. You are the community. And it's like, when something like Parkland happens, everyone from around the world comes in and then eventually they leave, and who's here? Local media. So it's, it's our job to tell these stories and to be the voice for people.
Although the media has moved on from DeMichael's story, his case remains unsolved like so many others here in South Florida. If you have any tips that could lead to an arrest, call Crime Stoppers at 305-471-TIPS. I'm Torrance Postel, Bay News.
Thank you, Torrance. It is always impressive to see how people find strength to survive such traumatic events and help others through them as well.
That's right. While some issues like gun violence always attract media attention, there are also many organizations in our community dedicated to help those whose story is not always heard. The Boys and Girls Club is one of the oldest community centers in South Florida, keeping our children and youth safe and off the streets. Boys and Girls Club is not only in Florida, but all over the world. They also have centers and military bases all over the U.S.
It's an after-school program. We have kids that attend the after-school program from the age of 5 and we go all the way down to 17, sometimes 18-year-olds. We help them with their homework, social skills, literacy. They play sports, and for the teens, we help them with for their workforce and also college preparedness.
Amber, who was a member when she was a teen, is now working at the organization.
When I first started here, I was in middle school. School wasn't really for me, so it definitely helped me get back on track. I was shy, the little timid girl, like by herself in the corner, and being around other people that were really warming helped me gain friends and the confidence and start dance and a lot of other activities.
Due to the lack of attention and funding, many of these clubs have been at risk of closing down. However, due to their fundraising events, such as the golf tournament and generous donations, they have managed to keep their doors open.
As we can see, for working parents, it is a relief to know their children are in a safe and fun learning environment. The idea of having a safe place for our children leads us into our next story on women empowerment and their role in society.
Unemployment has become a significant discussion in today's society. Reporter Darlene Jaramillo visited one of these many organizations in Miami that help women overcome the obstacles they face when seeking a better future.
Daily, thousands of women struggle to find employment, to provide for their children and families. Dress for Success is one of the many organizations who have helped over 35,000 women in Miami.
I feel more confident, I feel beautiful, and I feel like the sky's the limit here. I can get whatever I need and feel comfortable.
Dress for Success empower women to achieve economic independence and offer them support by providing professional attire and training.
I think this organization, it empowers women to just to be liberated, to be free. So once they come here, some people are feeling down, some women are feeling down, don't really want to get back out in the workforce or feel discouraged to do so. But they come in, we empower them, we suit them to make them feel confident and just feel like they can actually go out and take on the world or go out and get that job that they really need.
Dress for Success founder Sonia Jacobson feels that this organization was her calling in helping women establish their future.
The first client that walked in that door, I knew I'd found my passion in helping women struggling to find themselves, to find employment. I knew that this is what I was meant to do. And that's how the whole thing began.
If you're a woman or know of a woman that is struggling in finding a job or don't have the necessary tools or training, visit one of the many organizations in Miami like Dress for Success who are willing to offer help and guidance for your future. I am Darlene Jaramillo.
Thank you, Darlene. This has definitely become a crucial issue for women. For more information on how to find other organizations like Dress for Success, you can visit thepowerofpurpose.com.
Now we'll go into a commercial break. Please stay tuned and join us for a discussion about fake news and the future of journalism. Welcome back to Bay News. With the many platforms used today to share news, it is sometimes difficult to know who we can trust. How we get our news today is being influenced and shaped by the technology that keeps us constantly connected. But not everything that is shared can be instantly labeled as truth. I spoke to a few people to find out how today's technology is affecting the way they get their news. Let's take a look.
Although there are still news consumers who count on sources that have been around for years,
I remember getting like a regular newspaper, at your door, and now I get my newspaper, the same paper, but it comes to me electronically in my inbox.
My emails I get from CNN, so that's who I usually get the news from and listen to.
Today, 67% of Americans are turning to unconventional sources of media for all the current events.
One place I'll hear about news a lot, and I'll try to confirm by what other people heard, is through Twitter.
I use an app called Reddit. I just scroll through it and I see it on my timeline, whatever pops up pretty much. On YouTube, there's this guy named Philip DeFranco, and he's where I get most of my news from. I'm also a huge fan of the Young Turks, but sometimes their news can be a little biased.
One thing does remain constant for most consumers. Not everything that is shared and posted is always trusted.
I trust them to deliver the news, and then I make sense of the pieces that I need to make sense of based on all the other sort of things going on around me.
I usually don't trust what I see. I just take it with a grain of salt. And if I feel interested in the topic, I'll look it up myself to see if it's really true or not.
As you can see, how news is produced and consumed has drastically changed over the years. To discuss this issue, we have today Dr. Fred Belevins, journalism and media professor, and Luis Rodriguez, associate producer for Univision, to help us better understand how we arrived in this era, how to survive it, and where we go from here. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Dr. Belevins, we're going to start with you. As a journalist and journalism professor, how do you feel the idea that anyone now can be a journalist has affected the media's credibility throughout the years?
For 225 years, 230 years or whatever, we've had a journalism system in this country that has been a demand side, is that the audience made demands on it, and it was delivered by news organizations, whether those were newspapers or TV stations or whatever. What we have now is a supply side journalism, and that is that it's the difference between a garden hose and a fire hose. And so every day, people are just shoving more and more stuff into the pipe, and that has brought a tremendous pressure on the consumer to be able to try to ferret out what is good, what is bad, and what should I be consuming.
Right. Luis, as part of your everyday job, how do you see this reflected?
Well, as Dr. Belevins was mentioning, with this rise of social media platforms and really the capacity that everybody has to publish news and to publish their analysis of news or their observations about daily events, you do see a saturation of content, and you see a lot of different sources for the same event. You see a lot of different points of view. That's a good thing, actually. I feel like it exposes people, exposes the audience to a lot of opposing views in many different points. However, I feel like the integrity and the ethics that you're taught, specifically, for example, in college and graduating from college and later on in your career, that distinguishes a journalist from what a citizen journalist is. A citizen journalist will point a camera at something and then maybe publish that with what they think. A journalist has the capacity to do that, but also has the responsibility to do so in such a way that the truth is what they're seeking, that the most objective form of the story is what they can publish. And I think that makes a big distinction between the two.
Dr. Belevins, there have been previous events in history where the media used propaganda and what we call today fake news to achieve a certain response for the people. How should we as consumers receive and digest news differently, since there is really no filter to determine if all these messages being shared are truthful or not?
Yes, there is a way, but you've got to be a lot more sophisticated to be a news consumer today than ever before. This rise of people's journalism, the so-called people's journalism, is really putting a great deal of stress on our press freedoms, and to try to get consumers educated to what is a healthy news diet.
So going off of that, Luis, when you're producing news, how do you identify real news from fake news and decide what to share with your audience to make them trust your work?
The workflow is where the workflow is really where I think we establish that credibility. For example, we receive a wire from one of our wire services that something's happening somewhere, and we distinguish whether our audience would benefit from having that information or not. In order to really establish that credibility, we also add an analysis that is relevant to them and that allows them to make better decisions about their everyday life. It's not just that Puerto Rico was struck by one of the biggest hurricanes to ever strike the Caribbean in its entire lifetime, but really it's how that affected the people there. And so when you're asking me, how do we make the distinction, or how do we get that credibility so that we can actually be seen by people so they keep coming back to us for news, we put our boots on the ground and we go and we ask people what they need. And because we put their needs and we publish them and we broadcast them, I'd like to think that relevant resources are given to them, or government assistance is given to them. Specifically, as I brought up now, Puerto Rico, that was a great example of our coverage there. So our credibility really comes from the fact that we're where we need to be.
Going back to the issue of credibility of the media, a recent poll result issued by USA Today showed that only 36% of respondents approve of the mainstream media, and in majority 50% say they disapprove of the press. Dr. Blevins, where do we go from here?
I think this is a pendulum thing, and you know, I've lived long enough that I've seen this thing, you know, go both ways, and probably in a third wave now, in my observation anyway. Talk about Puerto Rico. What the news consumer should have been doing, and what I do on a regular basis, is I get the news organization that's closest to the event. The whole idea of trying to get the closest version of the event, you know, is always going to be your best bet. And you're going to see a lot less of hand-wringing, because they're out there like boots on the ground, and you know, they don't have time to sit around.
Louis, what should education and schools do to train journalists today to gain the support of the news consumers, especially at a time where the media approval rate is so low?
It definitely, you know, if we take a history lesson, a brief history lesson, we'll note the origins of journalism, where really as a protest, for example, within American society, there was a protest against the injustices propagated by the United Kingdom. That is the fourth estate. The reason why journalism exists is as a checks and balances against the other three branches of government, really, and really just as a social political movement. The idea behind, at least in my opinion, the idea behind journalism is helped really by the fact that now we have access to social media, and now we have access to all these different platforms. But we have to remember where it came from and what the point of it is. And we keep bringing up the fact that people that there isn't too much credibility, unfortunately, in what the mainstream media is saying. That might be so, but if we find a way for these students that are currently in the college classrooms of the world to bring back this sense of credibility by going back to those historical roots, by going back to objectivity and going back to finding just the truth, then we'll be able to make a real differentiation between what is the analysis of a news story and what that news story actually is. Do you want to know what somebody thinks about what happened? And that differentiation is, I think, precisely because of social media and because of the fire hose mentality that it's just, you know, let's get that content out there. That differentiation, I think, is being lost a little bit. We're not sticking to this what, when, where, why, and how. We're doing all of that and then kind of going like, well, this is what I think about that. So that adds subjectivity to it, which is at least in my opinion, in this political atmosphere that we live in, I believe that it's necessary, to be honest with you. There should be a protest against many of the things that are happening at the international and domestic scale. If you're going to gain credibility again, then you need to provide a source of information that is objective, that is centrist, that is, this is what happened, this is what this means, and not move on from there. So what can our college students do? Well, they can take a history lesson. They can see why it is that they're graduating as journalists, what their mission objective is. Is it to get their own point of view out? That's good. Then there's a medium for that. But if they're trying to become journalists, then they need to remember to put the microphone in front of somebody and ask what happened and stick to that. That's the story.
Awesome. Is there anything you want to add to that, Dr. Blevins?
Yes, I do. In fact, I agree with all of that. But I also add that, and you may have recalled this from my class, but I have a fond saying that the journalist's job is not to fix the world. The journalist's job is to tell the world what's wrong with it.
Well, I want to thank both of you for joining me today again. As we discussed, journalism is not dead, but we do have some challenges up ahead. We'll be back after this.
We build houses.
We build strong, simple, and secure houses.
We build strong, simple, and secure homes for people in need.
We build strong, simple, and secure homes for people in need with your love.
Get involved
and help build it.
In 1976, Miller and Linda Fuller had a dream to create housing for all peoples across the nation. Housing that was simple, decent, and affordable. Habitat for Humanity was that dream, and in 2010, by power of will by local volunteers and community donations, we have built over 350,000 houses all over the world. But our dream and the dream of those in need can't come true without your help. Whether you would like to become a volunteer, donate, or become a homeowner, it's through people like you that we can continue our good works. Habitat for Humanity has not only built houses, but has created homes for over 1 million people. And we will continue our mission so that no one goes without a place to call their own. Charity always starts in the home, and it could be a home that you help build. For more information, log on to www.habitatsuffolk.org.
Social media has brought up many challenges, one of them being cyberbullying, which has become a topic of concern for our society. I met some people from an organization whose mission is to mentor individuals who have been affected.
One of the things that Envy does to support teens that are being cyberbullied is I think group therapy is really the best thing. Group therapy and mentoring. When someone tells you that you are less than, you surround yourself with people that build you up and not tear you down. There are always going to be haters. There are always going to be people telling you that you're not good enough. Those are not your friends.
National Voices for Equality, Education, and Enlightenment, also known as ENVY, is an organization that's working hard to address the prevention of cyberbullying across the nation.
Don't blame, take responsibility. The power of communication, the power of listening, and just what it really is to be a good friend. It's also just really important to remember to be a good person and do things without intention of harming others.
I believe at some point we or someone we know have been affected by these issues. It's always good to know where to go for help, and we need to hear about these success stories. With the right support system, there's always hope.
Media can be used to give young people a voice. One organization is teaming up with high school students and FIU students to give them the production skills they need to tell their stories. Alexandra Capote reports.
The Eyes on Your Mission Academy is a training that produces videos and digital content for nonprofit organizations.
So I think what really sets Eyes on Your Mission Academy apart from other similar programs is the cross-curricular component. That means taking high school students with college students and then teaming them up with nonprofits to create interesting and compelling content about important issues about social justice and equality. And I think what they get out of that is sort of a real-world experience for the FIU students in terms of working for a client, being responsible for delivering that content to the client. But also the mentoring part is really important for them, and I've learned this through the focus groups we've been doing as we do the academies. Almost across the board, they all say, to me, the best part of this workshop is working with these students.
The apprentices work hands-on with the mentors and nonprofits in all aspects. The end goal is to produce real content that will be used to market the organization.
The opportunity was presented to me. I heard it was an amazing film opportunity. You were working with an actual production company, and it was just more on time for me to create and just work on storyboarding and also film and just get more hands-on and just, work on my knowledge about film.
Every year, the students get to use new technology and production tools. This year, the team will use 360 cameras and drones for various angles while filming.
So 360 video is technology that can be used for digitally and physically being there, being able to capture your surroundings and interact with your surroundings using 360 camera and equipment.
The Florida nonprofit sector has grown over 40% in the last decade. The Eyes on Your Mission Academy is always looking for new mentors, apprentices, and nonprofit organizations. For more information, visit eyesonyourmission.org. With Bain News, I'm Alexandra Capote.
That's great. Such a great opportunity for high school students to develop their talents while also helping their community.
Exactly. Tune in next week for our nightly news special. This is Bain News. My name is Brianchelis Hernandez.
And I'm Vanessa Tello. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.